President Cyril Ramaphosa saying South Africa will continue to support efforts to find a lasting solution to the conflict in the Middle East. He made the statement in his weekly newsletter to the country on the first anniversary of the Hamas attack on Israel. 1,200 Israelis were killed in that assault, which sparked an onslaught in which more than 40,000 Palestinians were killed. The president has also warned that the escalation of conflict in the Middle East, which now includes Lebanon's Hezbollah group and Iran, threatens to plunge the region into war in which civilians will be the most affected. Let's continue with our reflections on this one-year anniversary of that attack by Hamas. Bring in now senior researcher at the Center for Africa-China Studies, that's Dr. Emmanuel Matambo, who joins us via our video link this morning. Doc, great to have you on the program. Thanks very much indeed for speaking to the SABC News channel. And we've been listening into those reflections even from as far off as Tel Aviv since really the crack of dawn this morning. And I wonder what comes up for you in a context where it feels that even though everybody agrees that there's been incredible human suffering since this time last year, there's still no solution in sight.
Good morning, and good morning to your viewers. Thank you for the kind invitation. Yes, indeed, there seems to be no end in sight, at least at the moment. And you rightly put it there in your preface when you talked about the deaths of people, especially in Gaza. I mean, we are standing at more than 41,000 people dead. There are 97,000 people who have been wounded, and we cannot really calibrate the damage that has been done in terms of infrastructure as well. Well, when it comes to Israel's role in this and whether or not Israel can craft a way to resolve this conflict here, a cynical view is this, that the prolongation of this war keeps Benjamin Netanyahu intact as Prime Minister of Israel. Unfortunately, that is the case. If the war comes to a steady resolution of some sort, Israel will then have to look at its domestic politics. And obviously, the most compelling story when it comes to that will be whether or not Benjamin Netanyahu has outlived his youthfulness in office. So this war is a distraction, so to say, to the many troubles that he faces at the domestic front.
Absolutely. It's interesting that as recently as Saturday, we heard the likes of French President Emmanuel Macron asking for a halting of this war. This is important to point out because until this point, it almost felt like the West has been backing Israel, and perhaps much of that effort is waning.
Yes, indeed. What another thing that is important is that in May of this year, Karim Khan, who is the chief prosecutor of the International Criminal Court, requested for a filing of arrest warrants for Benjamin Netanyahu, his defense minister Yoav Gallant, and then 3 of Hamas leaders, 2 of whom have since died. Now, what has been an important development is that in September, for the first time, the United Kingdom's government said it will not block the request for this particular warrant. So this actually shows a shift, so to say, in the Western perception of what is happening and it's in that region, and its support for Israel as well. There was also a leaked information last week. I do not know how credible it is, but that President Joe Biden of the United States thinks as though Benjamin Netanyahu wants to lengthen the war, hoping that in next month's elections in the United States, Donald Trump, who has proven to have a penchant, so to say, for people like Benjamin Netanyahu, would win the election. So that just shows that, yes, there is a change of shift, so to say, from the West. They are not as unqualifiedly supportive of Benjamin Netanyahu as they have been thus far.
You'd imagine that that would affect Israel's stance, but seemingly that's not happening. I mean, Benjamin Netanyahu, when he spoke before the UN General Assembly late last month, really doubling down on the rhetoric, for lack of a better term, speaking about Israel's need to defend themselves and saying that, in fact, they won't stop at anything. But a step further has been taken because Israel has also essentially declared the UN's Secretary General, Antonio Guterres, persona non grata. I don't think any member state has done that in recent history.
Indeed, apart from the words that you just used there from Benjamin Netanyahu's remarks at the United Nations General Assembly, he used the word savages. Now, at the beginning of these hostilities last year, Yoav Gallant used the word human animals to describe Hamas. So that to a lot of people, has a racial subtext to it. And then when it comes to United Nations Secretary General Antonio Guterres, yes, he has just called for reasoned heads to prevail. But then Naftali Bennett, who is the former Prime Minister of Israel, created a context to what has happened since then by calling Antonio Guterres a clown the day when Iran issued a barrage of missiles against Israel. I do not think this wins Israel a lot of allies. I do not think this wins Israel a lot of sympathy, especially in the developing world. So the kind of rhetoric that is coming from Israel, the kind of hostility that it has issued against Antonio Guterres is actually counterproductive on Israel. And this is very unfortunate because as this is going on, there are still dozens of people being held hostage under Hamas custody. And these people are at a risk of torture and they're also at a risk of death.
Absolutely. As you and I speak, reports emerging of loud bangs and explosions still ringing out in Beirut, that's in Lebanon, because of course this war has taken on a new face, or at least added on another dimension in the last year, with Lebanon and Hezbollah entering the fray, so to speak. Israel also, of course, retaliating against the rockets that have been fired yesterday, which have breached their air defenses, injuring a number of people in Israeli side of the border. And, you know, the question I often ask whenever we have the conversation around peace in the Middle East is who, in fact, is best placed to reach out to either side and at least have a meaningful conversation around a cessation of hostilities. And I wonder who that person, if they exist for you, Doc, is.
It is a very, very difficult question to respond to. But just before I come to that, yes, talking about what is the escalation that has been happening in Beirut as well, it has also deepened Israel's culpability. Filippo Grandi, who is the United Nations Refugee Chief Representative in the region, said what Israel has done in Beirut actually risks breaching international law because it actually targeted civilian infrastructure and also a hospital in northern Gaza has also been bombarded. When it comes to who really can negotiate or mediate a resolution to the intractable conflicts of the Middle East, one would think as though obviously we have to look at international instruments such as the United Nations, the International Court of Justice and the International Criminal Court. I think those could bring some pressure to bear, so to say. I do not think that the mediation of the United States thus far has been successful, and this is because apart from obviously the military support, the military might, and the economic support that the United States can render to this conflict, it has not really proven itself to be an impartial broker. It has proven itself to be a defender of Israel, sometimes a defender of Israel at all costs. And this obviously presents the United States not really as a player that will mediate impartially. So we'll probably have to refer to the United Nations. But of course, this at the moment doesn't seem feasible, looking at how Israel is so much hostile to the United Nations Secretary General.
Absolutely. Dr. Emmanuel Matambo, thanks very much indeed for sharing your insights with us. As we say, many people around the world concerned about what's taking place, but it seems few people know what the solution may look like, given just how entrenched both sides are in their views.